Every unique weapon in Fallout New Vegas? Let's go. The Cram Opener is a unique version of the Bladed Gauntlet, requiring an unarmed skill of 25 and a strength of 5 to use it most effectively. Being a pretty mid unarmed weapon, it does have a ×2 crit multiplier, but it also weighs 10 pounds, so depending on your strength, it might weigh you down a lot. Now there are a couple different ways to get the Cram Opener. It all revolves around a Lil Buster who can be found at Camp McCarran. The first two ways are kinda naughty. You can either just outright kill Lil Buster and loot it off his corpse, or if you feel like going the more stealthy approach, you can always just try to pickpocket him and steal it that way. But say you actually have morals for some reason, you can complete the quest 3-card bounty given to you by Major Daughtry, and in this quest you will be tasked with killing 3 fiends, and upon completion of the quest and a couple of endgame days, Lil Buster will have left Camp McCarran and can be found in Freeside. Heading just left of the old Mormon forts on these railroad tracks, you will come across Lil Buster's body, and upon looting the body, you will find the Cram Opener. Now one interesting fact about this is, say you did actually pickpocket Lil Buster and steal the Cram Opener that way, if you also complete the quest 3-card bounty, you can get the Cram Opener again, so technically you can have 2. Dr. Klein's Glove is a unique variant of the Scientist Glove which can be found in Old World Blues. Requiring an unarmed skill of 45 and a strength of 3, it makes for a pretty decent weapon if you want like that nerd scientist unarmed build for some reason, with a pretty decent crit multiplier of ×3 and some extra unique effects. When punching with this glove, you will inflict a -5 reduction to the target's energy weapons and a -2 reduction to the target's strength for 30 seconds. And upon a critical hit, you will inflict an additional 1% reduction to their strength and a 1% reduction to the target's damage threshold for 60 seconds. And Dr. Klein's Glove can be found in Higgs Village in House 101 in the upstairs middle room. And interestingly enough, if you equip this weapon, Dr. Klein's Glasses, and Dr. Klein's Scrubs, you will complete the Clandestine Challenge. And real quick side note, since there is no sponsor for today's video, make sure to use code CRAZY at GamerSubs, get that money off, link will be down there below in the description. They got some really good drinks, some awesome cups, some really cool merch, make sure to check them out and use code CRAZY, KRAZY at checkout. Back to the video. Dr. Mobius's Glove, which is very similar to Dr. Klein's Glove, is also a unique version of the Scientist Glove, but this one does require an unarmed skill of 35 and a strength of 2. With a little bit lower action point cost, but only a crit multiplier of ×2, it will be a little bit different from Dr. Klein's Glove. Upon striking an enemy with this glove, you will inflict a -5 reduction to their energy weapon skill and a -2 reduction to the target's perception, and this is both for 30 seconds. Now upon a critical hit, you will inflict knockback and frenzy on the target. And frenzy is kinda what it sounds like, where your target kinda goes crazy and just starts attacking everything. Dr. Mobius's Glove can be found in the Forbidden Zone right where Dr. Mobius actually is, found just chilling on a table to the left of the stairs that lead up to the brain tank. And very similar to Klein's Glove, equipping this, Dr. Mobius's Glasses, and Dr. Mobius's Scrubs, you will complete the Mobius Strip Challenge. Embrace of the Mantis King is a unique version of the Mantis Gauntlet and will require an unarmed skill of 75 with a strength of 4. Doing a really good amount of damage with also a very high DPS and a really good amount of crit damage, this is honestly one of the better unarmed weapons. Really the only downside that it does have is going to be its weight of 12, but I mean, with how much damage this thing is pumping out, I think it's worth it. The Embrace of the Mantis King is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC and can be bought at Mick and Ralph's. So you don't have to go through any quest or trek across the Mojave to get in, all you gotta do is have a bunch of caps, so I hope you're pretty good at blackjack. The Fist of Rar, or if you have the Wild Wasteland trait, the Fist of the North Rar, is actually a craftable unique weapon in the Lonesome Road DLC. All you will need is Rar's Talon and an unarmed skill of 75. Hit up a workbench and you can craft the Fist of Rar. Now to get Rar's Talon, you're going to have to head to the Divide, and in the Divide you're going to want to find the Boxwood Hotel roof. There will be a cave just past that, and upon entering it you can find Rar, which you will then need to defeat to get Rar's Talon. And after hitting up a workbench and creating the Fist of Rar, you will require an unarmed skill of 100 and a strength of 6 to use this effectively. but it's worth it. With the amount of damage and damage per second and its crit damage that it does, this is honestly one of the best weapons in the game. Which does make a lot of sense because of the amount of effort that you have to go through to get it and the requirements to actually use it. It better damn well be worth it, and its damage and crit damage are more than well worth it. Now, interestingly enough, the Fist of the North Roar, which again is the Wild Wasteland trait name for it, is actually a reference to the Fist of the North Star, an old school anime which takes place in a post-apocalyptic setting, which, if you're familiar with memes, you might recognize.
お前はもう死んでいる。何?
The Golden Gloves are a unique version of the boxing gloves, requiring an unarmed skill of 0 and a strength of 1. What's interesting about the whole boxing gloves, Golden Gloves weapons in Fallout is that they do a lot of fatigue damage. The Golden Gloves do the most with 50 points per strike, and with such low requirements, it makes for a pretty fun weapon to use. I wouldn't really recommend fighting big enemies or anything like that with them. These are more of a have fun and just go beat up people on the strip kind of weapon. But if you are interested in getting them, they can be found on the casino floor of the Lucky 38 in the VIP lounge. And they are located on a shelf behind the bar right next to an issue of Boxing Times. And a couple of interesting notes about this is that Festus and Muggy can be disabled with the Golden Gloves, while most other robots cannot, and also with this weapon you can destroy a turret without making it explode, so the more you know. The Greased Lightning is a Gun Runner's Arsenal unique variant of the Power Fist, and this took the word speed and just ran with it. Its overall damage is pretty decent, but its damage per second is really where it shines. You are just able to get so many attacks off with this weapon in such rapid succession that it's a pretty damn good unarmed weapon. Now, to use this effectively, you're going to need an unarmed skill of 50 and a strength of 5. So a little bit more than a lot of the unarmed weapons we've seen so far, but it's definitely worth it. Now, since this is a Gun Runner's Arsenal weapon, there are two ways to get it, and they both require spending some money. You can either get it in the Hidden Valley Bunker, and it can be sold by Torres after progressing in the quest Still in the Dark. You will eventually be able to purchase this. Or if Torres is dead, you can head over to the Gun Runners and purchase it from the Vendatron. Now really the only downside to the Greased Lightning is that since you attack so fast, your weapon will decay a lot faster, so hopefully put some points into repair. Love and Hate are going to be a unique version of the Spiked Knuckles, requiring an unarmed skill of 50 and a strength requirement of 3, doing a decent amount of damage, but having a very fast DPS, and only having a weight of 1, with also being a holdout weapon so you can sneak them almost anywhere. Love and Hate makes for a very good unarmed stealthy build. And also, they just look pretty freaking awesome. I mean, look how cool those things look. If you want like that mafioso type of look, this is definitely what you want to go with. Love and Hate can be found at Bonnie Springs, which will be just north of Good Springs. And you can find this weapon on the Viper Gang Leader. And depending on how early you show up in the game, this might be a little bit difficult of a fight, or it could be a complete stomping. Now, the name Love and Hate seems to be a reference to the 1955 movie The Night of the Hunter, where the character played by Robert Mitchum has the words love and hate tattooed on his knuckles. The Paladin Toaster, which is a unique variant of the Zap Glove, will be requiring you to have an unarmed skill of 75 and a strength of 4. With having pretty mid compared to all the other unarmed weapons, damage and DPS, where this thing really shines is the bonus damage that it does against robots and against enemies in power armor. And except NCR power armor, but we'll get to that here in a minute. The Paladin Toaster can be found in the Black Rock Cave just northwest of Novak. It will be found on the body of a dead prospector all the way in the back of the cave, and it will be guarded by a couple Nightkin, so be ready for a fight. Now this is a very good weapon to use against robots or anybody that thinks they're all high and mighty because they got some power armor, but it does not work against characters wearing NCR salvaged power armor because that's technically not classified as power armor. So if you are wearing the Paladin Toaster and you're going up against that thinking you're all high and mighty, you might want to think again. But if you're going up against those nerds in the Brotherhood of Steel, have a field day. Next up is Pushy, which is a unique variant of the Displacer Glove, and will require an unarmed skill of 100, but only a strength requirement of 2. Such a huge disparity between those two. Doing a really good amount of damage and overall crit and crit chance, this is a pretty solid unarmed weapon. In order to get this, you're going to want to head to the Ruby Hill Mine, which is not too far away from Jacobstown, and it will be found on the dead body of a Jackal gang member. The recompense of the Fallen is going to be a unique variant of the Dog Tag Fist and requires an unarmed skill of 0 and a strength of 1 to use, so easily accessible to all. Doing a lower damage and having a okay DPS. With an okay crit damage, this weapon is definitely an early game weapon and not a late game powerhouse like a lot of other weapons we've seen. And that might have to do with how easily you can actually get it. This weapon can be found at Cottonwood Cove, and can be found in the desk in the office of Aurelius of Phoenix, which is on the second floor of the Cottonwood Cove HQ. So maybe if it's the early game and you're trying to play as the Legion, this could be a pretty solid choice for you. Up next is going to be Salt Upon Wounds Power Fist, which is a unique variant of the Power Fist, requiring an unarmed skill of 50 and a strength requirement of 6. Doing a pretty good amount of damage and damage per second, with having a pretty good amount of crit damage. What's also interesting about Salt Upon Wounds Power Fist, other than looking pretty freaking cool, it also deals a poison damage that will do 3 points of damage over 10 seconds per strike, and also make your target dizzy and vulnerable to further attack. In order to acquire this, you're going to have to pretty much beat the Honest Hearts DLC, and towards the end, depending on how you end up dealing with Salt Upon Wounds, you can either get it from his dead body, or upon exiting the DLC, you can get it at the footlocker that spawns near the Southern Passage. And apparently there is a way to get 2 of these. After killing Salt Upon Wounds and taking the weapon off his body, if you drop it or put it in another corpse, and come back before the end sequence, you can grab that and get another one from the footlocker. So technically you can have 2 for some reason. I don't know why you would want 2, but you can have 2. Next up in the Honest Hearts DLC, we have She's Embrace, which is a unique variant of the Yao Guai Gauntlet. Requiring an unarmed skill of 50 and a strength of 4, this is a pretty interesting unarmed weapon because it's either like really good or not very good at all. When it comes to its crit damage, it's not really that good compared to the rest of the unarmed weapons, but when it comes to its critical chance, that is actually pretty high. It does have incredibly high durability, but it also weighs 10 pounds, so you know, give and take. So She's Embrace definitely has its pros and cons. Now, She's Embrace cannot be found, and instead it is rewarded upon completing the Rite of Passage for Whitebird, in which, as he so eloquently puts it, do drugs, kill bear.
Take drugs, kill a bear.
The last unarmed weapon we have is going to be the Two-Step Goodbye, which is a unique variant of the Ballistic Fist. Requiring a whopping unarmed skill of 100 and a strength of 9, you are definitely going to have to hit the gym in order to use this. When it comes to its damage and DPS, it is definitely on the higher end of all the weapons we've talked about so far. But its crit damage is kinda low, but its crit chance is very, very high. But as a trade-off, it does have a unique effect. If a target is killed by a critical hit, there will be a 2-second delay, then the body will explode and damage everything around it. Now, the Two-Step Goodbye is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC, so you're gonna need a lot of caps. This can be purchased from the Vendatron at the Gun Runners. And this weapon is very, very fun, because when you punch things, they go flying back and they explode. But this can also have a bunch of unintended consequences. Say you're trying to attack a very specific individual while also having friendly people that you do not want to injure or piss off right next to them, you might piss off everyone around you. But still, there's nothing better than giving this to Veronica and just telling her to go wild on literally everything she comes across. Just let her off the leash and let her go loose to the Mojave, and destruction and carnage will definitely follow. The Blade of the East is a unique variant of the Bumper Sword and is carried by the Legate Linnaeus during the final confrontation at Hoover Dam. What really sucks about this weapon is it's really good. It does a good amount of damage and has a high DPS, does a pretty good amount of crit damage, with its crit percent being a little low, but it also has this cool effect where it will inflict -2 HP for every 10 seconds per strike on your enemy. So this sword is really solid, but you only get it at the end of the game, and there's only like one opportunity to use it, so you really can't play around with it too much. And even if you were able to get it somehow early on in the game, It requires a melee skill of 100 with a strength of 9 to use it effectively. So the requirements to actually use the Blade of the East are very, very high, even if you were able to somehow get it earlier on in the game, which you can't. So really the only chance you get to use it is the final confrontation with the NCR. That's if you didn't choose the NCR path. Like, that's if you're like working for like Daddy House or Yes Man or something. Now, there was a variant that was introduced with Lonesome Road called the Blade of the West, but that is not a unique version, and the Blade of the East stands out as its own unique variant. The Blood Nap is a unique variant of the Bowie knife, requiring a melee skill of 50 and only a strength of 4 to use effectively. Having one of the highest DPSs out of all of the melee weapons, the Blood Nap is absolutely insane. It does a really good amount of damage and crit damage, and some extra effects are bonus crit chance, bonus crit damage, and you get 10 plus sneak while having this weapon equipped with a 0.5 weapon reach. So this beef-caked up machete is just a powerhouse. Now, in order to get this, you're going to have to go to the Courier's Mile in the Lonesome Road DLC, and it will be found stuck in a pole on a street lamp. And I definitely think out of all of the melee weapons, this one is definitely one of the better ones. The next weapon is the Broad Machete, which is a unique variant of the machete. Having a melee skill of 0 and a strength of 3 to use, this would be a pretty mid-tier melee weapon. Especially when you look at the regular machete, which does do bonus limb damage, and the Broad Machete does not. Kind of a disappointment. And also, the regular machete has a special attack called the Backslash, while the Broad Machete does not. But I guess it does kind of make up for it by having a higher base damage and a higher DPS than the regular old machete. And you will automatically get this weapon at the start of the game if you have the Tribal Pack and Courier Stash installed. So a free, pretty good melee weapon at the start of the game, I'm not complaining. Chance's knife is a unique variant of the combat knife and is featured in the comic All Roads, which is a prequel to the events of New Vegas. And Chance's knife actually has a really interesting backstory, so I would recommend reading the comic All Roads if you would like to know a little bit more. Requiring a melee skill of 50 and a strength of 3, you can get this weapon fairly early on in the game. It's going to be located at Chance's Grave, which is just north of Goodsprings. It will be up near the tribal village, but do be careful because you might have to fight a Cazador or two in order to get it. Now, Chance's knife does a good amount of damage and has a really high DPS with a good amount of crit damage and crit multiplier. And it even gets the special attack, the Backslash, so at the cost of less damage, you deliver a quicker attack and you hold the weapon in a reverse grip, which I think is just pretty freaking cool. And because of the requirements to get this are so low and the weapon is just so good and you get it so early on, this is definitely in the running for one of the best melee weapons in the game. The next melee weapon is also another one you can get fairly early on in the game, and that is going to be the Chopper, which is a unique variant of the Cleaver. Requiring a melee skill of 0 and a strength of 2, its damage is kind of on the low side, but having a really good DPS. Its critical damage, kind of low, but its crit multiplier is pretty good, but it also has an effect of doing a 1.5 bonus limb damage, while also having the special attack, the Backslash. And if you are wanting to get to the Chopper, see what I did there? You're going to want to head to the Wolfhorn Ranch, which is not too far away from Novak, and it's going to be inside of the farmhouse on the stove. So again, fairly easy to get early on. The Figaro is going to be the unique version of the Straight Razor, with having a melee skill of 0 and a strength of 1 to use. And of course, it's a Straight Razor, so do you really expect its damage to be that high? No, good, because you'd be correct, but its DPS is actually pretty good, with also having a really good crit multiplier. So you're not going to be doing too much regular damage, but its critical damage is actually going to be pretty good. With also having the special attack, the Backslash, and being very easy to sneak into almost anywhere, this makes for a very good stealth-based build. Now, if you were wanting to acquire said weapon, you're going to have to be a little bit of a bad boy. You're going to want to head to the King's School of Impersonation in Freeside. You're going to want to talk to the barber Sergio. And when I mean talk, I mean you're either going to have to kill him or pickpocket it off of him. Like I said, you're going to have to be a little bit of a bad boy. Now, one interesting thing about this is the weapon's name is actually a reference to the opera The Barber of Seville, where the protagonist is a barber named Figaro. With the Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, we got the Guyana, which is a unique variant of the shish kebab. requiring a melee skill of 75 and a strength of 6, so pretty decent requirements. Having a really high damage and really high DPS, with a moderate crit damage and a pretty good crit multiplier, this is one of the better melee weapons that we have seen. And if you pair this weapon up with the Pyromaniac perk, it becomes even more powerful. Now, like I said, this is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, so of course you can buy it from the Vendatron at the Gunrunners. And another cool thing that you can also do with this is you can also double down on like its whole damaging over time effect. If you combine this with the Pyromaniac perk and some Bleak Venom, you can turn this into one of the most powerful weapons in the game. So if you're wanting to run around like a lunatic with a flaming sword and a motorcycle gas tank, then be my guest because it's absolutely terrifying. The Knock Knock, which is a unique version of the Fire Axe, requires a melee weapon skill of 75 and a strength of 5 to use, having a pretty high amount of damage with a really high DPS and crit damage, while also having the special attack, the Mauler, which will be a slower attack that causes a knockback effect that does a little bit less damage. And it looks pretty freaking cool as you like spin in a circle, so huge fan of that. Now, in order to get the Knock Knock, you're going to want to head to Camp Searchlight, and it's going to be found in the fire station. And in order to get that, you're going to have to get the key from Logan, who is found in the Searchlight Church basement. And you can deal with all of those guys however you see fit, but you want to get the key to the fire station is where I'm going with this. And you want to head into the bathroom and disrespect everybody's privacy, and in the bathroom you can find the Knock Knock. The Liberator is going to be another unique variant of the Machete, requiring a melee skill of 25 and a strength of 3 to use. Having a kinda low base damage, but having a pretty good DPS with a lower than average crit damage and a pretty good crit multiplier, with also having the effect of doing bonus 2.5 to limb damage, the Liberator is a pretty solid melee choice. It also keeps with the tradition of having the backslash as its special attack. Now, say you are interested in getting this weapon, well, you're gonna wanna head to Nelson, and it will be found with Dead Sea. Now, if you're progressing with the Legion, it will be rewarded to you after completing the quest We Are Legion. And say you are not going with the Legion, then all you gotta do is kill Dead Sea and the weapon will be yours. One of the more fun unique melee weapons is going to be Neffy's Golf Driver, which is a unique variant of the 9-iron, requiring a melee skill of 25 and a strength of 2. Having a more on the low end damage, but having a higher DPS with a really good crit damage and a pretty good crit multiplier, the Golf Driver is just going to be really fun to use, especially with the unique special attack 4, where you will literally swing this like an actual golf swing, which does more damage and is guaranteed to knock enemies down. So this thing is just a lot of fun to use. Now, if you were wanting to get said weapon, you're going to want to head just outside of Camp McCarran, near the Samson Rock Crushing Plant, and it's going to be found on Driver Nephi. All you gotta do is kill him and the weapon will be yours. And what's pretty interesting is there's actually an achievement that's somewhat related to this. If you kill Mr. House with a 9-iron or Neffy's Golf Driver, you will complete the challenge A Slave Obeys, which is a reference to Bioshock.
A man chooses, a slave obeys. Kill!
Next up is going to be the Nuka Breaker, which is a unique variant of the Rebar Club, requiring a melee skill of 50 and a strength of 9, so you're going to have to be pretty yoked, having a pretty high base damage and a pretty good DPS, but where it shines is its crit damage and its crit multiplier, so it definitely does a lot of crit damage. And the Nuka Breaker's special attack is going to be the Nuka Break, which does the same damage as a regular attack at the cost of more action points, where you basically just spin in a circle and attack your enemy. Now, if you were interested in getting said weapon, well, you're going to want to head to Freeside and buy it from Mick and Ralph's. Now, say you may or may not have killed Mick, well, you can purchase it from the Vendatron at the Gunrunners. Next, we have Oh Baby, which is going to be a unique variant of the Super Sledge, requiring a whopping melee skill of 100 and a strength of 8 to properly use. Having a very high damage and DPS, with also having a very high crit damage, and having the special attack, the Mauler, this is going to be one of the best melee weapons in the game. Now, if you were wanting to get Oh Baby and then just give it to Lily and tell her to go to town, you're going to want to head up near Jacobstown to Charleston's Cave. And heading to the back of the cave, you can find it not too far off of this dead Nightkin and this chewed up stealth boy that you do need for the quest Guess Who I Saw Today. Old Glory is kind of unique because it stands out on its own. It's not like really a unique variant of a different weapon, because this is literally just a flagpole with a golden eagle at the top. So I guess if anything, it would be kind of like the unique variant of like a pool cue or the throwing spear, because those are what you need for repairs. Having a melee requirement of 50 and a strength of 7, while also having a pretty good base damage with a very good DPS, and also having an insanely high crit damage with a pretty good crit multiplier, Old Glory just screams crits for days. With having a special attack called Grand Slam, which is a wide swing similar to like a baseball swing, which will do twice the damage but is much slower. Now, Old Glory is going to be a Lonesome Road DLC weapon, and there are two different ways to get it. Number one, during the final battle with Ulysses at his temple, you can either kill him and loot his body, or two, after completing the DLC and returning to the Canyon Wreckage. Very similar to a lot of other weapons in DLCs, it will be waiting for you at a footlocker with a couple other cool stuff. The Humble Cudgel is a unique variant of a lead pipe. Just saying that sounds hilarious to me. Having a melee skill of 50 and a strength of 5 to use. And overall, this is a pretty mid melee weapon, with its base damage being kind of on the lower end, but having a more than high average DPS with a kind of low crit damage and a kind of low crit multiplier. It's not the best melee weapon, but I don't think it's the worst. It's pretty mid. And it does have the special attack Lights Out, which will do 25% more damage, but is slower to use. In order to get this, you're going to want to head into the sewers of West Vegas, and it will be found on a dead prospector's body. And there is an unmarked quest called Cajoling a Cool Jewel, which is related to this weapon. Now, a more detailed way of getting that, so you want to head outside of Camp McCarran, and there's going to be a sewer grate. You want to go into said sewer grate. The first thing we got to find is the key. To get this key, after you pass these NCR, you want to go right and then just go straight down. There are tons of like ghouls and little mole rats and everything in here, so it can be kind of annoying, but if you have everything cleared out, follow my path and come up to this red doorish roomish, and in here you will find Blind Luke. And once you have that done, if you head all the way back to where we started, so right where the NCR troopers are, instead of going right, you want to go left and kind of follow where all the fiends are. The more fiends you see, the more you know you're going in the right direction, and you're going to have to kill a bunch of them. So you want to keep going, and you want to make your way all the way to this sealed door. Once you get inside the sealed door, you're going to run into a bunch of ghouls, but I think you'll be able to manage, and you want to go through this door to the left into this room where you will find a said dead prospector, and there is your glorious lead pipe. The last melee weapon we have is the X2 antenna, which is literally an antenna, requiring a melee skill of 75 and a strength of 7 to use, having a more than average base damage and a pretty good DPS with a lower crit damage and a pretty low crit multiplier. But where this antenna shines is it does plus 50 damage against robots and plus 20 damage against power armor, and of course excluding NCR power armor. And it does all this while also having a pretty high weight of 15. And it does have its own very unique special attack called Pain Frequency that will do twice the normal damage, but it also uses more action points to employ. And the X2 antenna is going to be an Old World Blues DLC weapon, and it's going to be on the top of the X2 transmitter antenna array. You will get this just playing through the DLC, so it's not like you have to go out of your way to find it or anything, so don't really worry too much about having to go hold detective mode to try to find it. You'll come across it. Joshua Graham's pistol, A Light in Shining Darkness, is one of the best pistols in the game. It is a unique variant of the 45 auto pistol and will require a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 3 to use. Compared to its 45 auto counterpart, it's going to do greater damage, have a higher DPS, have less weapon spread, and a greater critical chance and critical damage. The only real, downside would be it does carry one less in the magazine than the 45 auto pistol. So you will be reloading a little bit more. And with this fast fire rate, you'll definitely notice a lot of it. Now, in my opinion, this is one of the best guns in the game, and I absolutely love using it. And there are a lot of perks that really help this gun out, but one of the best ones to get is definitely Grunt. You combine that and this pistol, and you're going to be doing a lot more damage. Now, if you were wanting to get said pistol, you're going to have the Honest Hearts DLC. And in that DLC, you got to do one of two things. Either one, go complete the DLC, and then you'll get it right at the end in the footlocker, or two, you got to do the unthinkable and kill Joshua Graham. I know, you really don't want to do that. He's one of the coolest characters of all time. But those are your two options. Now, one cool thing about this pistol is you might notice there are some words written on the side, or I should say etched in on the side, 'cause it's not really written in. And this all translates to, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." Which, of course, is a Bible verse that just fits perfectly with Joshua Graham. The Abilene Kid LE BB gun is the unique variant of the regular BB gun. And for this weapon, you're going to require a whopping 0 in guns and a large 1 in strength. I know, a lot of requirements, but it's worth it. Now, its damage is very, very low. Its DPS is very, very low. Everything about this shouldn't even be a feasible option, except for its critical damage. This little BB gun has insanely high crit damage and a pretty okay, decently mid crit chance. So if you combine that with like sneak, you can get some pretty high crit shots and actually make this weapon feasible. You can actually make a crit shot from this do more damage than a sniper rifle in the game. So just think about that. So if you are like trying to build like the crit chance, like elite sniper gang, this might be for you. FaZe Clan is like calling your name. Now, in order to get this, there are two different ways you can get it. The first way is if you do not have the Wild Wasteland trait. All you have to do is go to the Field Shack, which is just outside of the Nellis Air Force Base, and it's going to be right inside of the shack. If you do have the Wild Wasteland trait on, it will be activated during the Wild Wasteland encounter with Rex, in which he will come up to you and warn you that Jimmy got stuck in the well, in which you have to go to Jimmy's well, and crawling down there, you can find this BB gun. Now, this BB gun was conceived by Josh Sawyer and was intended to be a throwback to the Red Ryder LE BB gun. And if you know anything about old school movies, that might sound a little familiar. The All-American, which is a unique variant of the Marksman Carbine, is yet another gun that can also be considered one of the best weapons in the game. Doing more damage and having a faster fire rate and therefore DPS than its original counterpart, it also does more critical damage and uses slightly less AP. And it even has a higher magazine capacity. And with the scope that it comes with, it makes this thing not only deadly at close range, but also farther away. And with it using 5.56 ammo, which is pretty easy to come by, you feel like you never just run out. Now, the All-American is kind of annoying to get. You're gonna want to head to Vault 34. Vault 34 is, I feel like they just laid out the vaults absolutely, like, how would you ever get around this vault? It's laid out so terribly to be like used for like normal humans, but I digress. You want to jump into the vault and kind of follow my path. The first thing we want to get is the security terminal password. And to get this, we're going to have to swim in some irradiated water. Ooh, a little bit of radiation never hurt anybody. So once you have swam in the first irradiated pool of death, you want to jump out and you will immediately be greeted by a couple ghouls. Kill them and continue following my path. We're going to head through the clinic. Coming out from the other side and continuing down, we will find yet another submerged area that we need to get a password from. So, you know the drill, dive on in and get the password. So now that you have the utility password, we're going to want to activate the pumps. And to do this, you want to head to the utility room and come right up to this computer and use it and activate the pumps. So now that we activated the pumps, you want to backtrack a little bit and go to the previously flooded area. A new door will now be available for you to go in. And with this, we're going to make our way all the way down into the security room, and we're going to use the terminal that's in there to unlock the Overseer's office. And now that we have the Overseer's office unlocked, we want to backtrack all the way up and follow the signs for admin. and we want to continue to the Overseer's office because that's where we're going to unlock the armory at. But do be careful, because once you get to the Overseer's office, you're in for a little bit of a fight. Not like you haven't been in a fight this entire time, because there's places just riddled with ghouls. Now that you have gotten to the Overseer's office, come up to this terminal and you want to activate it and unlock the armory. And with that, backtrack a little bit and follow the signs for the armory. And now that you have reached the armory, the All-American will kind of be in the middle of the room on the overturned table. So there you go. Good job. You somehow made it through this terrible maze. Now, a lot of things in Fallout New Vegas are references, and the All-American is definitely one of them. Designed by Josh Sawyer, when choosing its name, he made it a reference to the 82nd Airborne Division, which was nicknamed the All-American Division, because upon activation in 1917, it was found to contain draftees from all 48 states. And you have to remember, at that time, there was not 50 yet. The Big Boomer, which, other than the fact that it's an accurate name for me, is also a unique variant of the sawed-off shotgun, and one of the best shotguns in the game, doing a very large amount of damage and its DPS being insanely high, with a very low crit damage and a pretty low crit chance, and also the fact that it's not really considered a holdout weapon makes this kinda not good for stealthy based builds. Not that you can't use it like that, it's just not its strength. Carried by Old Lady Gibson at Gibson Scrapyard, there are two different ways to take it from her. You can either be a gentleman and pickpocket it from her, or you can just kill her and take it off her dead body. Whichever one you feel like, champ. And I do think the Big Boomer is very, very good. I can't use it because I hate having to reload every second, and it's just very annoying for me to have to do that. I know it's really good, and I know it does a lot of damage, but that reloading just kind of pushes me off a little bit. Now, I have heard that the Big Boomer is a reference to Mel Gibson's character in Mad Max. In that movie, his character is also toting around a sawed-off shotgun. And the weapon just so happens to be found with Old Lady Gibson, Mel Gibson. Coincidence? I think not. The Bozar is a pretty interesting weapon. When you look at it, it just screams sniper rifle. And even when you look down the scope, you still feel like you're using a sniper rifle. But it's actually a unique light machine gun, requiring a gun skill of 100 and a strength of 8 to use, so you're gonna have to continue your push-ups and pull-ups if you want to use this effectively. Its damage would be on the lower side, but because of its insane rate of fire, it does have a very high DPS. Its crit damage is nothing to write home about, neither is its crit chance. But because of its accuracy and its rate of fire, it makes the Bozar really reliable and insanely deadly. Now, the Bozar is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC weapon, so you can only get it from the Vendatron at the Gunrunners. And Josh Sawyer actually described his design logic when it came to this gun as follows. Guys, let me walk you through my design logic on implementing the Bozar. The Bozar in Fallout 2 was functionally an accurate fast burst fire weapon. Its icon looked cool and very distinctive. Presumably, people liked the Bozar because of how it actually worked and how its icon looked, not because of what its description said or how it looked on the Chosen One's tiny avatar. Fallout New Vegas has scoped semi-auto bolt lever rifles dropping out of the sky, from Rat Slayer to All-American to the long carbine to the anti-material rifle. They are well represented. Scoped automatic weapons in Fallout New Vegas? Not that many. The K9000/Fido are the only two I can think of, and those fire 357 mag and 44 mag at a relatively low fire rate with a moderate spread. Based on these factors, I thought the best course for implementing the Bozar was to make it an accurate, fast burst fire weapon, essentially a unique scoped light machine gun that looked more or less like the icon from Fallout 2. Christine's COS, aka Circle of Steel, silencer rifle is a unique variant of the regular sniper rifle, requiring a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 6 to use. This is one of my favorite weapons in the game. If you're looking for that stealthy sniper build, this is literally the best weapon for it. Like, it doesn't really get much better than this, other than the Rat Slayer. Rat Slayer's pretty goated too. Having a pretty high base damage and a relatively low DPS because of its slower fire rate, but having a really high crit damage and a pretty good crit chance of 2.5. Just to give you an idea of how strong this is, we're going to talk about the Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle here in a minute. Christine's COS Silencer Rifle actually has a higher base damage than the Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle, and by a pretty significant amount. Now, the Scout Rifle is better in other areas, but when it comes to just base damage, Christine's rifle takes the dub. Now, this weapon was introduced in Old World Blues and can be found in the northwest corner of Little Yangtze on the second floor of this destroyed building. And doing a little bit more looking into this weapon, with all the bonuses applied to every weapon, this gun will do the highest single shot damage of all the silenced firearms in the game. So again, stealth sniper build, this is your go-to. The CZ57 Avenger is going to be a unique variant of the minigun. Requiring a gun skill of 100 and a strength of 10, you're going to have to be pretty high level to use this thing as efficiently as possible. Now, compared to its standard minigun counterpart, it's going to do a little bit more damage, but have a much faster rate of fire, giving the Avenger a very high DPS, actually the highest DPS of any weapon in Fallout New Vegas. Now, compared to the standard minigun, this will weigh significantly less, coming in at only 18 pounds. And the standard minigun will hold twice as much ammo in the belt as the Avenger does, so you will only get a couple seconds of continuous fire before you unfortunately have to reload. Now, if you are interested in picking this weapon up, you're going to want to head to the Devil's Throat, which is just a little bit northeast of Bitter Springs. And if you head all the way down into the blue truck, you will find it on the body of a dead prospector, along with this pretty dope-ass party hat. So if you are able to get the stats to effectively use this thing, I mean, hell, even if you can't, it is still a powerhouse of a gun with 5mm ammo that's pretty easy to come across. The Dinner Bell is a unique variant of the hunting shotgun, having a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 5 to use. Compared to the original hunting shotgun, it will do more damage and have a higher DPS. Even though they still have the same fire rate, because it does more damage, it gets the higher DPS. But when we take a look at the modified hunting shotgun, the modified version actually wins in 2 categories: magazine, well, quote-unquote, magazine capacity, and weapon spread. The modified hunting shotgun is actually better in those regards. Now, I'm not trying to say this to take away from the Dinner Bell. I still really love it, and it's actually a really good shotgun. I'm just letting you know where it stands. Now, if you are interested in getting the Dinner Bell, you're going to want to head to the Thorn, and this will be given to you by Red Lucy after you are finished with the quest Bleed Me Dry, in which she tasks you with getting a bunch of eggs from a bunch of creatures that may or may not progressively get stronger and stronger. You start off with like little things like mantises and manti, whatever one it is. I think it's manti. And then you progressively get up there until she asks you for a Deathclaw eggs. But hey, if you can't complete the quest, not only do you get the Dinner Bell, you also get some sexy time. The Gobi Campaign Scout Rifle is also yet another unique variant of the regular sniper rifle, requiring a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 6. Doing only a little bit more damage than its regular sniper rifle counterpart, it will also have a higher DPS by a pretty significant margin, and it even has a higher DPS than Christine's silenced rifle, while also having a pretty good crit damage and crit chance. And it also has a pretty freaking cool camo on it, so what's there not to like? The only real downside of this would be that not only do you need a high gun skill and strength to effectively use it, you're also going to need a high lockpick skill in order to get it. The weapon can be found in a very hard gun case and the sniper's nest just northwest of Cottonwood Cove. And there is no key tagged with this, so you can either try to force the lock open or get your lockpick high enough to be able to get it. But once you do have it, it is definitely worth it. Me personally, I prefer Christine's silenced rifle because, especially if you're going with a sniper, you want it to be silenced. But this is still a pretty good alternative that will definitely suit almost your every need. The Lelong Carbine, that's not how you pronounce it, but we're going with it, is a unique variant of the Cowboy Repeater, requiring only a gun skill of 25 and a strength of 5 to use. Compared to its original counterpart, it's going to be a little bit better at pretty much everything. Damage, DPS, crit chance, crit damage, AP, you name it, it's going to be a little bit better. The one thing that I really love about it is it comes already equipped with the extended feeder magazine, so you reload way faster compared to the regular Cowboy Repeater. Now the only downside about this is the way you have to get it. You really can't get it through like normal means. There are only 2 real ways to do it. This weapon is carried by Corporal Sterling, who is a member of 1st Recon and Camp McCarran. And you can either get it by straight up just killing him. If you kill him, then you can loot it from his body. Or 2, you can try to kind of reverse pickpocket him in a way. If you have a high enough sneak, and even if you do, this is still kind of difficult and will require you to save a million times, but you want to try to make him switch out weapons by giving him a different weapon and ammo for said weapon, and taking all of the ammo for this carbine from him, so that way he switches to a different gun. And eventually he will do this, and then you can actually steal this weapon from him, but it takes a lot of reload saving and a long time to do it when you could just kind of make him have a little happy accident. Now this beautiful sniper is a reference to the protagonist of James Cooper's series of novels known as the Leatherstocking Tales, in which there's a character named Nathaniel Natty Bumppo, where in the book The Last of the Mohicans is known as Hawkeye and Long Carbine, and he is described as being a near fearless warrior skilled in many weapons, mainly the long rifle. Next we have the unique 12.7mm Lil Devil, requiring a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 8 to use. Yeah, for a pistol. Lil Devil, compared to its original counterpart, does greater damage, has a faster fire rate with a higher DPS. It also does more critical damage and has a better critical chance. And the real kicker about this weapon is 1, it looks pretty freaking cool and I love the way it operates, and 2, it also is considered a holdout weapon, so you can sneak this into almost anywhere. Like, just looking at this, you wouldn't think it's a holdout weapon, but it actually is. Now, if you are interested in acquiring said weapon, this is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC gun, so of course that means you're gonna have to buy it. You're gonna have to head to Freeside and hit up Mick and Ralph's. But say Mick may or may not have met a very tragic accident, then you can always head to the Gun Runners to get it. One of the best looking guns in the game is gonna be Lucky, which is a unique version of the .357 Magnum revolver, requiring a whopping gun skill of 0 and a strength of 3. Almost anyone can use this, doing more damage than its .357 Magnum counterpart, and actually its damage equals that of the police pistol found in Dead Money. But compared to all the other variants, Lucky does do more damage per second, mainly because of its faster fire rate. It also has a really good critical chance and a pretty solid crit damage. But when we compare the crit damage to the police pistol, it actually lags behind the police pistol by quite a lot. But it does make up for that in having a very low action point cost. And honestly, I find myself using this a lot, not because of how good I think it is or anything, but just because it looks so freaking cool. Like, if you're like dressing up your character and playing for aesthetics, this is the one gun you need. It fits the strip so well. Now, in order to get this, you're gonna need quite a good lockpick skill. There is a hard locked floor safe in the Bison Steven Hotel in Prim. You're gonna have to break into that. So if you somehow have enough lockpick by the time you get to Prim, you can get lucky very early on. Now, the design of the gun could always be a reference to Old Lucky, a Colt single-action army owned by Frank Hammer, a Texas Ranger who led a posse that ambushed and killed Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. And if you know anything about Vicky and Vance, this all kind of fits in a little too perfectly. And the real-world gun Old Lucky looks pretty similar to the Lucky in the game, so I would say it's safe to say that this is what it was based off of. Next is the gun that started it all, Maria, a unique variant of the 9mm pistol, requiring a gun skill of 0 and a strength of 2 to properly use. Now, Maria is pretty interesting because out of all of the 9mm chambered weapons, this does the most damage. And compared to its original counterpart, the 9mm pistol, it does more damage, has a much higher DPS and a slightly higher fire rate, while also having a better critical chance and doing more critical damage with a lower AP cost. And with it being a holdout weapon, it makes for an excellent choice for you to sneak into almost anywhere. And I mean, hey, the gun looks freaking awesome. Like, this and Lucky are some of the coolest aesthetic guns in the entire game. Now, Maria may not be the strongest gun, but it still is really good. Now, I'm pretty sure you should know how to get this by now. It's gonna be on Benny, and all you have to do is either kill Benny, or you can always pickpocket it from him when you're at the tops. But let's be honest, you're always gonna kill him. No matter how it happens or how it goes down, Benny's probably gonna die. Now, there are some challenges that you're gonna need Maria to complete. The first one is Talk About Owned, in which the player must kill Benny and own his gun, aka Maria. The next one is The Same Could Be Said of All Religious Weapons. The player must kill 15 feral ghouls with Maria, Gehenna, I already forgot how to pronounce the unique shish kebab, and or the holy frag grenades. And lastly, the gun that this is based off of would be the real-world Browning high power pistol, specifically the Renaissance model. Another very cool aesthetic weapon is going to be the Medicine Stick with a gun skill of 100 and a strength of 6 to use. The Medicine Stick is a unique variant of the brush gun and is quite expensive to get, so hopefully you have a lot of caps, but I'll get to that here in a second. The Medicine Stick does the second highest damage per shot of all ballistic rifles in the game and is only second behind the anti-material rifle, so this would be a really good one shot, one kill. Doing a little bit more damage than its original brush gun and also having a higher DPS and attack speed, while also having the same crit chance and a little bit higher of a crit damage. The Medicine Stick, like I said previously, does make for a one-shot, one-kill gun. If using this to its fullest ability, you really shouldn't be using too many bullets on your enemy. Especially when you combine this with the Cowboy perk, the Medicine Stick will do even more damage, making it even more deadly. Now, if you're interested in grabbing this, it is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC weapon, which means you're gonna have to buy it, and it is sold by the Venetron at the Gun Runners for quite a hefty price. So hopefully you got quite a bit of caps, because it is gonna be a lot. Now, the Medicine Stick's whole design could all be a reference to the Native American tribes of North America. Medicine sticks, also called spirit sticks, are used by some Native American tribes for rituals relating to the spirit world, and are often decorated with beads and feathers from spirit animals. And also, weapons chambered in 4570, which the Medicine Stick is, were often sold as a surplus to Native American reservations as hunting rifles during the 19th and early 20th century. And Native Americans would frequently decorate their guns they acquired with feathers, beads, and nails, very similar to the one we see in-game. The Mysterious Magnum definitely points to the Lonesome Drifter being the mysterious stranger's son, but we'll get to that here in a second. The Mysterious Magnum is a unique variant of the 44 Magnum, requiring a gun skill of 50 and a strength of 6 to use, doing much more damage than its Magnum counterpart and also having a much higher DPS and attack rate, while also having a pretty good critical damage but a kinda low crit chance and a lower AP cost, and also breaking a lot faster than its Magnum counterpart. The Mysterious Magnum is still a solid choice. In order to get said weapon, you're gonna have to find the Lonesome Drifter, who you can find at the Sunset Sarsaparilla billboard, which is just north of the El Dorado gas and service station. You can either 1. Kill him and loot it from his body, or during the quest Talent Pool, when you are sent to find talent for the tops, you can pass a barter check of 50 to recruit him, and he will give you said Magnum as a reward. And with this weapon and the line that the Lonesome Drifter said that his father was a mysterious fella doesn't prove that he's the mysterious stranger's son, I don't know what will. Paciencia is a unique variant of the hunting rifle, requiring a gun skill of 50 and a strength of 6. Compared to its hunting rifle counterpart, it does a little bit more damage and has a higher DPS compared to its hunting rifle, but the modified hunting rifle, it actually does a tad bit less. But where this shines is when it comes to its crit damage. It does more than double the crit damage than the regular hunting rifle. While also having a crit chance of 2, the Paciencia excels when it comes to crit builds. Now, because this is a Gun Runner's Arsenal weapon, you guessed it, you're gonna have to buy it, but not from Mick and Ralph. You're actually gonna wanna buy this in Novak, and will be sold by Cliff in the Dino Bites gift shop. Now, if for some reason you killed Cliff, of course, head to the Gun Runners. Now, combining the Paciencia with like hollow point rounds and a bunch of other perks like finesse and pretty much anything that improves your crit chance, you can make this one of the strongest weapons in the game when it comes to criticals. and you can actually even make it outclass the anti-material rifle. Now, the Paciencia translates to patience, and according to Josh Sawyer, this name was chosen because you only have 3 shots, so you better make them count. The Rat Slayer is a unique variant of the Varmint Rifle, requiring a gun skill of 0 and a strength of 3 to use. Having relatively low damage and DPS, and even crit damage, you would think that the Rat Slayer is just a garbage gun, especially when it's just a unique Varmint Rifle, which isn't really that good. But you would be kind of right and kind of wrong. It actually has a pretty high crit chance. And with its extended mag, silencer, and night scope that it comes with, if you're trying to pick off some low health targets, you're going to be one-shotting majority of them. Now, I wouldn't recommend going up like against Deathclaws or anything like that with the Rat Slayer, but hell, against like ghouls or like mole rats or any kind of mid to low level enemy, you're just going to be one-shotting them, so you can save your big boy guns for the big boys and leave everything else to the Rat Slayer. You will be able to acquire this by heading into the Brock Flower Cave, and making your way through the cave, you will find it all the way in the back leaning against the desk, and this kind of makeshift jank laboratory. If you do have the Wild Wasteland trait, the rats will become rodents of unusual size and are going to be much stronger and more durable. But this is a pretty easy spot to get to early in the game, so you shouldn't have too much trouble. Another suppressed gun that we got in the game is going to be a Sleepy Time, which is a unique variant of the 10mm submachine gun, requiring a gun skill of 50 and a strength of 5. Compared to its original counterpart, it's going to do more damage, have a higher DPS, and have a pretty low crit chance. Like, it's insanely low, and kind of low crit damage too. But where this shines is it comes with a suppressor and an extended mag. And it's also considered an improved holdout weapon, so you will have to put some points into sneak if you want to be able to sneak it into places. But just thinking about how this thing is like a holdout weapon is pretty funny, but when you look at like real life like secret services and stuff, carrying like MP5s and like Uzis all around, it kind of makes a little sense. Now, since Sleepy Time is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, it will be sold by the Vendatron at the Gunrunners. The Sturdy Caravan Shotgun is a unique variant of the Caravan Shotgun, requiring a gun skill of 0 and a strength of 3. Added on with the Courier Stash and or the Caravan Pack, you will be able to start the game with said shotgun, doing more damage than its original counterpart and having a higher DPS, while also having a very, very low crit damage and crit chance, which kind of makes a little sense because you don't want to like start off with the most overpowered weapon in the game. But compared to its original counterpart, it also has a much higher spread, so hitting anything that's not close range is going to be kind of difficult. Well, not difficult, kind of pointless. You're not going to be doing as much damage. So with the Sturdy Caravan Shotgun, you really want to get as close to the enemy as like humanly possible. And also, compared to the Caravan Shotgun, the Sturdy Caravan Shotgun, as the name suggests, is going to be a lot sturdier. Comparing its durability to the regular Caravan Shotgun, it's going to be able to fire pretty much double the amount of shots. And it's pretty interesting because the game kind of doesn't classify this gun as a shotgun. Something must have went wrong with that because this is not affected by the Shotgun Surgeon or any stay back perks. And this was fixed by a Josh Sawyer mod. So it seems like maybe this was intended to be a shotgun, but for some reason it wasn't included. The Survivalist Rifle is one of my favorite weapons in the entire game, a unique variant of the Service Rifle requiring a gun skill of 75 and only a strength of 4. That was kind of surprising, doing a solid amount of damage and a very, very high DPS, especially when you compare it to its original Service Rifle counterpart. It also does a lot more crit damage than the Service Rifle, while also having a much higher action point cost and a lower magazine size. It only has a magazine size of 10 compared to the Service Rifle, which is 20. And also, the Service Rifle shoots 5.56, while the Survivalist Rifle shoots 12.7, and I'll get to more on that here in a minute. But the Survivalist Rifle can be found in the Honest Hearts DLC. It will be in a duffel bag marked the Survivalist Duffel Bag at the summit of the Red Gate. And looking at this weapon, you might notice that there are some words on it, and it does read this: property of the US government checkpoint carbine, 12.7mm caliber, long reach arsenal, Ontario, US territory, and it also has the word stop and the French word for stop written on it. So it seems to me like this was a checkpoint gun in Canada. And since it's in 12.7, it seems that this was an anti-vehicle weapon that somehow my brain-dead courier got his hands on, and now uses it to shoot literally everything. And similar with a lot of other weapons in the game, there are some perks that can affect this gun. And if you combine this gun with the Grunt perk, it's gonna do even more damage. Now there are a couple other perks that add a little bit more damage, but the Grunt one is definitely the way to go. And Josh Sawyer himself even commented on the Survivalist rifle, saying this.
Was there a specific reason for the Survivalist rifle in 12.7? Yeah, it's based on the Beowulf. There's like a checkpoint. There is an actual checkpoint carbine. Like there's a 50 caliber Beowulf. Like it's actually intended to be a checkpoint carbine, like a real world weapon like that. And 12.7 is essentially supposed to be like 50 AE or whatever. So yeah.
That gun is one of my favorite weapons in the game. I love the Blade Runner-esque theme. It's just freaking awesome. It is a unique version of the 5.56 pistol, which was introduced with the Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC. That gun requires a gun skill of 50 and a strength of 6. While doing a pretty decent amount of damage, a little bit more than its 5.56 counterpart, and a pretty good DPS with its fast fire rate, and a pretty good crit chance with a lower than usual crit damage, that gun, in my opinion, is a really solid early to mid-game weapon. I mean, hell, you can even take it into late game, especially since it's 5.56 and ammo is abundant with that thing. But unfortunately, it's not considered a holdout weapon like the standard 5.56 pistol, so you're not going to be sneaking it into anywhere. I also feel like its durability is a little low, and I feel like you're going to have to be repairing it a lot more often than you would with other weapons. But still saying that, I love this gun and I find myself using it all the time. Now that gun can be found in Novak inside the Dino Bites gift shop. You can either be a good Samaritan and purchase it from Cliff, or you can sneak in when he's gone and break into the storage room and just loot it right off the shelf. You know which one to do. Be the good Samaritan. Now that gun and the 5.56 pistol is modeled after the pistol used by Rick Deckard in the film Blade Runner, and is also used in the challenge Benefit or a Hazard, where you have to kill 15 robots with a 5.56 pistol. And this challenge in of itself is also a reference to the film. So this gun in and of itself is just a complete reference to the film of Blade Runner, which, huge fan. And the name That Gun, according to Josh Sawyer, comes from the fact that many players referred to the 223 pistol in Fallout and Fallout 2 simply as That Gun. This machine is probably my favorite gun in the entire game, mainly because of the ping. But this machine is a unique version of the Battle Rifle, which is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC weapon, and will require a gun skill of 75 and a strength of 5. Doing a pretty good amount of damage, more than its Battle Rifle counterpart, and also having a pretty high DPS, with a low crit chance but a pretty high crit damage, this machine is a just solid all-around gun. And plus, I mean, come on, you got the ping. What more do you want? Now, to get this machine, you're going to want to do the unmarked quest Dealing with Contreras, where you can either side with Sergeant Contreras or turn him in to Lieutenant Boyd. But at the end of this quest, no matter which side you end up helping, you will be rewarded with this machine. Now, this machine is based off the M1 Grand. In real life, the M1 Grand is chambered in 30-06, but some M1 Grands did see a conversion to 308, which was used for the Navy, due to the limited availability of the M14. And the name This Machine is a reference to Woody Guthrie's guitar, in which he had a sticker that said, "This machine kills fascist" on it. And if we look at this machine from Fallout New Vegas, it reads, "Well, this machine kills commie" etched into its side. Vance's 9mm submachine gun is a unique variant of the 9mm submachine gun, doing more damage than the 9mm submachine gun and having a very high DPS, with a low crit chance and pretty low crit damage, but not the lowest we've seen. And also, since it's 9mm, ammo is very easy to come by, especially with that fast fire rate, you're gonna need it. And being able to fire 1,000 more rounds than its non-unique version, Vance's 9mm submachine gun is pretty solid. Now, in order to get said machine gun, if you want to do it the right in-game way, you're going to want to head to Prim. And if we actually check the plaque next to the empty gun case, it will read, "The 9mm submachine gun preserved in this glass case to the left of this plaque is the actual weapon Vance carried in a paper-wrapped box under some suitcases in the trunk of his car during his and Vicky's crime spree. Never fired and luckily untouched by the hail of bullets that ended its notorious owner's life. The weapon's mint condition inspired dread to all who look upon it. Experts speculate that Vance might have killed as many as 50 people had he ever fired the gun, so long as his aim was exact and he was starting off with a full clip, or even more if he had additional ammo clips and remembered to reload. Which is just like the funniest thing ever. Like, this guy could have been real dangerous if he was. But talking to Prim Slim about the gun and passing a 50 science check, you will learn that the gun is in Wynn's hideout. And if you do have a 55 speech, you can convince the Wynns to pretty much just give you the gun. Or you can always, deal with things a different way, but if you have the high speech, you can just go that way. Now, this gun was used by Vicky and Vance, who is a reference to the real-world Bonnie and Clyde. And the combination that the Wynns give you to the safe is 05-23-34, the date that the real-life crime duo was killed. The last firearm that we have is going to be the weathered 10mm pistol, which of course is a unique variant of the 10mm pistol and requires a gun skill of 0 and a strength of 4. This was added on with the classic pack and the courier stash, so you can start the game with it. And compared to its original 10mm counterpart, it's going to do a little bit more damage and have a little bit better DPS. Because it's a weapon that you can start the game off with, of course they're not going to make it too overpowered. There's not really too many unique guns that can accept weapon modifications, and the weathered 10mm pistol actually is. So you can throw on an extended mag, a laser sight, and a silencer, which would make this yet another silenced unique weapon. But the real bad part is its durability is very, very low, so it will break pretty fast. And like I said, if you want to get this weapon, you will start off with it if you have the classic pack or the courier stash add-ons installed. Moving on to energy weapons, we have the AER-14 prototype, which would be the successor to the AER-9 and AER-12. Requiring an energy skill of 25 and a strength of 3, this is going to be a more buffed up version of the laser rifle, doing more damage and having a higher DPS, while also having a higher crit chance and crit damage. The only downsides to this is that it uses 2 microfusion cells per shot, so you will be reloading a lot faster, and its durability is much less than the regular laser rifle, so it's gonna break a little sooner. Now, if you are interested in grabbing this energy weapon, you're gonna want to head to Vault 22, and it will be located in the blocked off stairwell between levels 4 and 5, and it will be on the ground next to this dead jabroni. Now, interestingly enough, there is a piece of paper on the back of this weapon that says Focus 1064 nanometers, 532 nanometers, SHG 8:18 PM. And you can actually figure out what all this means. Like, there's an entire explanation for everything that stands for, and it's actually like a bunch of real world science. And I'm just a YouTuber, and I read it all, and it made no sense to me. So maybe if you are smarter than me, which is probably everybody, you could probably understand all this science nerd talk. Next, we have a 2-for-1. We got the Alien Blaster or the YCS-186. These both will spawn in the same spot, but it all just depends on if you have the Wild Wasteland trait active. If you have the Wild Wasteland trait, you will have the Alien Blaster. Coming just north of the Horwitzer farmstead, you will see a giant alien ship floating off in the distance, and some alien jabronis just chilling around. The alien captain will be holding on to a personal sidearm called the Alien Blaster, requiring an energy skill of 75 and only a strength of 1 to use. Packing a solid punch by doing a lot of damage and having a very high DPS with also a pretty high crit damage. And, the best part, here's the kicker, it is a guaranteed critical hit. So you will be taking out majority of your enemies with 1 shot. And to add on to even that, when you kill an enemy, they will disintegrate upon death, which is just a cool little effect. And I definitely think this is one of the more powerful and yet fun weapons to use in the game. A little lore breaking, kind of, yet not really, because like aliens are an actual thing, but yeah, you might understand what I mean. Now, if you do not have the Wild Wasteland trait, instead you will get the YCS-186, which requires an energy weapon skill of 75 and a strength of 5. And it will be in the same location as the Alien Blaster if you do not have the Wild Wasteland trait. And instead of being carried by aliens, it's just going to be carried by a couple mercs, dealing a staggeringly high amount of damage and having an insane DPS, like my god. and adding on top of that with a lot of crit damage and a pretty good crit chance, this is a really powerful gun. And this is a unique variant of the Gauss rifle. And if you have ever used that, you would know that that's already a pretty good gun. So whether you have the Wild Wasteland trait active or not, this spot on the map is gonna have a good weapon. And the name YCS-186 is actually a reference to the now defunct Your Console Sucks section of the Something Awful forum. Your Console Sucks, YCS, and 186 was the forum's ID number. The Cleansing Flame is a unique variant of the Flamer and is a Gun Runner's Arsenal DLC weapon, requiring an energy weapon skill of 50 and a strength of 7 to use. Now, compared to the original Flamer, it's going to do less damage and have a lower DPS. And you might be like, hey, I thought this was a unique weapon. Well, that's because it does have a burn effect skill that is much better than the regular Flamer. And the amount of damage done by this burn effect will depend on your skill level. So if you have like 100 in energy weapons, you will do an extra 60 points of damage. And because, like I said, this is a Gun Runner's Arsenal weapon, it will be sold in Freeside at the Silver Rush by Gloria Van Graff. And you know the drill, if she somehow slips down some stairs and doesn't wake up, you can buy it from the Gun Runners. The Compliance Regulator requires a whopping energy skill of 0 and a strength of 1 to use. Being, I think, one of the weakest unique weapons we have talked about so far, its damage, DPS, crit damage, and crit chance, well, its crit chance is not terrible, but everything else on paper looks pretty abysmal. And that is if you do not take into account its special effect. Upon a crit chance, you can paralyze your enemy. And this can stack, so if you keep shooting the guy and you keep getting crits, you can keep paralyzing him for longer and longer. Now, this is a unique version of the laser pistol, and if you just look at the stats, the laser pistol way outclasses this, except for the paralyze effect. So maybe if you're trying to go for a pacifist run or something along those lines, this would be the way to go. Because you could kind of just run around paralyzing and pickpocketing everything you need. So if you are interested in grabbing this glorified stun gun, you're going to want to head to the Honest Hearts DLC and go to the Fallen Rock Cave. And you can find it in the back next to a wooden box. Moving into Old World Blues, we have Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla Cannon, which would be a unique version of the regular Tesla Cannon, requiring an energy skill of 100 and a strength of 8 to use. And comparing this to the regular Tesla Cannon, it's going to do more damage and have a higher DPS, with pretty good crit damage and a pretty good crit chance. But the thing that's interesting about this unique weapon is that if all the requirements to use it are met, this and the Alien Blaster, I think, are the only two weapons that have no spread at all. So you will be really damn accurate with it. Now, there is another unique Tesla cannon, but we'll talk about that later down the line. But if you were interested in grabbing said weapon, you're going to want to head to Old World Blues and go to Elijah's Watch, and it will be laying on a wooden platform just slightly off of the main shelter. And do be careful, because after you first pick up the weapon, 5 Securitrons are going to spawn nearby and come for that booty. Euclid Seafinder is a very interesting, unique weapon because it feels much more than a unique weapon, because it's not really a gun at all. It doesn't do any damage. It just calls down the power of 1,000 suns from an orbiting satellite, only requiring an energy skill of 0 and a strength of 1 to use. Like I said, this thing itself doesn't do any damage, but during the quest, The Lucky Old Sun, if you decided to arm Archimedes, and you had to Freeside and you borderline threaten Max, this little kid, into giving it to you, aka you just buy it from him because you can't be mean to kids in New Vegas. But once you have completed the Lucky Old Sun quest, and once you have gotten this weapon from Max, you just point, aim, and shoot, and this happens. Now here's the bad part. The weapon can only be fired once every 24 hours, so once you use it once, I really hope you didn't need to use it again anytime soon. And the weapon can also not be used in VATS. So you see what I mean when I said it doesn't really feel like a unique weapon? But the name behind Euclid Seafinder is apparently referencing Euclidean geometry to find the third point of a triangle, C, using the given points A and B and the distance between BC and AC. So for an example, A would be Archimedes, B would be your position, and C would be the position of the target. Math. I'm not smart. I don't understand it. I didn't pass the 3rd grade. The Hollow Rifle is really freaking cool. It's a scoped, pump-action, energy-based sniper rifle. What? Needing an energy skill of 50 and a strength of 4, it does a lot of damage while having on the lower side DPS, but also doing a pretty high crit damage with a lower crit chance. So it's like yin and yang over here. But upon impact, it will apply an effect that does 15 points of damage over 3 seconds. And it also has like this cool visual effect with it too that I really like. Now the Hollow Rifle throughout Dead Money can also be upgraded. You can get the Hollow Rifle Focus Optics, which will increase your damage by 25, the Hollow Rifle Advanced Calibration, which reduces your spread, and the Hollow Rifle Reinforced Components, which will improve the maximum condition of your Hollow Rifle. So you can make this thing even more powerful and last a little bit longer. Not too much longer because it goes from like 495 shots to only 503, so not a lot. Now if you were interested in getting said weapon, all you gotta do is load up Dead Money and it will be given to you upon waking up at the villa. And what's interesting is that a fully modified Hollow Rifle with a really high energy weapon skill, in terms of damage, is better than the anti-material rifle. So after Dead Money, you walk out with a pretty powerful weapon. Now Josh Sawyer did have this to say about the weapon. It was initially always designed to actually be a grenade launcher that Elijah adapted for his own wacky purposes, loading in microfusion cells and ejecting them like spent shells, something I wish we could have done to make it stand out more, but could not do for technical reasons, is make the ejected microfusion cells look like smoking, burned out batteries. That would have been pretty freaking awesome. The motherfucking Hyperbreeder Alpha is a unique version of the Recharger pistol, requiring an energy weapon skill of 50 and a strength of 2. Now if you were to just look at its damage, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of low. Then you look at its DPS and you'd be like, oh wow, that's actually really, really high. That's because it has a really fast fire rate. Now its crit damage is equivalent to its regular damage, and it also has a pretty low crit chance. And compared to the Recharger pistol, its durability is going to be way, way better. But the Recharger pistol will be able to have 20 shots, and this will only be able to have 10. But it does have a really fast recharge rate, so I guess that kind of makes up for it. And I believe you can shoot 19 shots continuously before you have to wait for it to actually recharge. Now, if you were interested in grabbing said gun, you're going to want to head to Novak and buy it from good old man Cliff Briscoe. Or, if you're just like a huge piece of shit, the Gun Runners. Now, also, don't use like Turbo or have the Implant GRX, because both of those will make the motherfucking Hyperbreeder Alpha's recharge rate really slow, making it kind of pointless. The missing laser pistol is yet another enigma because it's kind of a unique weapon, but it's also like, when you look at it, it's really not. It's an alleged unique version of the laser pistol requiring an energy weapon skill of 0 and a strength of 1. And comparing it to like a regular laser pistol, they pretty much have almost the same exact stats. And you might be wondering, well, why is this unique? And it's unique because it is a part of a quest. During the unmarked quest Pistol Packing, Knight Torres from the Brotherhood of Steel in the Hidden Valley Bunker will mention that one laser pistol is missing from her inventory, in which you can offer to help find it. And you can find the pistol and take it back to her. And upon completing the quest, you will receive a tri-beam laser rifle instead of this useless pistol. Now back to actual unique weapons, we have Pew Pew, which is a unique laser pistol requiring an energy skill of 0 and a strength of 1, dealing a lot of damage, especially comparing it to the regular laser pistol, and having a really good DPS with a lot of crit damage and a very good crit chance. This shouldn't even be like in the same breath as like a regular laser pistol. That's just how much better the Pew Pew is compared to that. Now the Pew Pew does have some downsides. It does do 5 ammo per shot, and it only has a mag capacity, quote unquote mag capacity, of 10. So you get 2 shots, then you gotta reload. And it doesn't have as good of a durability anywhere near the regular laser pistol, so it will degrade a lot faster. Now, if you were interested in getting the Pew Pew, you're gonna have to complete the Legend of the Star. And that is the side quest that is given to you by Festus, where you have to find at least 50 Sunset Sarsaparilla Star bottle caps. And then you return to Festus to claim your prize, in which it will be Pew Pew on the body of a dead man named Alan Marks. And Pew Pew is considered an improved holdout weapon and is the second most powerful improved holdout weapon. So if you're going for that sneak build and you already have some pretty good sneak, and this is a solid option. The pulse gun is a portable EMP-based weapon that is not based off of any singular weapon and requires an energy skill of 25 and a strength of 2. Doing low damage, low DPS, low crit damage, and a low crit chance, but also having the added effects of doing plus 250 damage against robots and plus 110 damage against power armor. The pulse gun can be found in a very hard locked chest in Vault 34's armory and is actually used in one of Veronica's quests. Now the pulse gun is interesting because it does EMP damage. The robots of Big Mountain are resistant to EMP damage, and it really kind of makes this weapon even less effective against them. And it also uses 5 energy cells per shot. With an ammo capacity of 25, you don't really get too many shots before you have to reload. Now this is actually a pretty good base game weapon to use against robots and douchebags in power armor. But maybe not take it to Old World Blues. The sonic emitter is pretty good there. The Q35 matter modulator is not only a very cool looking gun, it is also a unique variant of the plasma rifle, requiring an energy weapon skill of 25 and a strength of 2. Now the official name is the Quantum Plasma Modulation Matter Injection Rifle version 35. That is a mouthful, good thing they shortened it up. And compared to the plasma rifle, it uses 1 microfusion per shot instead of 2. It does do a little bit less damage, but since its fire rate is twice as fast, it does have a higher DPS. The plasma bolts also have a much higher velocity, and it degrades a lot slower. Now to get said plasma rifle, you are going to want to head to the Repcon headquarters, on the main floor behind a very hard locked door, with also a very hard encrypted terminal. You can find it just on the other side. Now this whole gun is a reference to Looney Tunes, specifically Marvin the Martian, where he has a weapon called the Illudium Q36 Explosive Space Modulator, which is shortened down to the PU-36 Space Modulator, or the Uranium Q36 Explosive Space Modulator. So you can kind of see how those all tie in together.
The Illudium Q36 Explosive Space Modulator! That creature has stolen the Space Modulator!
The Spertel Wood 9700 is a unique Gatling laser, requiring an energy skill of 100 and only a strength of 6. With it weighing 15 pounds, you would think it would need a higher strength. Now it does have a low damage, a low crit damage, and a low crit chance. But because of its fire rate, it does quite a lot of damage per second. With it only using 1 electron charge pack per shot and having an ammo capacity of 90, you have a lot of damage being spit from this thing. Now compared to its original Gatling laser and even the modified Gatling laser, it does more damage, it does have a lower DPS than the modified Gatling laser, and a less crit chance but more crit damage. And its durability is also significantly lower than the Gatling laser and the modified one. Now this is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC weapon, so you can purchase it from Gloria in the Silver Rush. Now the name of this weapon, the Spreadle Wood 9700, is paying homage to Dr. Scott Spreadle, a medical resident who died in a 2003 biking accident, and Brian Wood, a lead designer at Relic Entertainment who was killed in a traffic collision in 2010. The Tesla Beaten prototype is another unique variant of the Tesla cannon, requiring an energy weapons of 100 and a strength of 8, dealing a large amount of damage plus an additional 25 damage for 2 seconds, and having a pretty good fire rate and DPS, with also having a decent crit damage and crit chance, while also using 6 electron charge packs per shot with an ammo capacity of 24. In comparing this to Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon and just the regular Tesla cannon, this one does more damage. It does have a lesser DPS than Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon. The critical chances are going to be the same, and it will do the same amount of crit damage as Elijah's. Where this thing does kind of slag behind is its durability. It is way less durable than the regular Tesla cannon and Elijah's jury-rigged Tesla cannon. To get this, you're going to want to head to the crashed Vertibird, which is going to be southwest of Camp Searchlight, and I hope you're ready for a fight because there are lots of robots over here. Now the name for this weapon is actually a reference to Kate Beaton, a webcomic artist whose comics have featured Nikola Tesla several times. The Smitty Special is a unique variant of the Plasma Caster requiring an energy weapons of 100 and a strength of 8. This weapon's pretty interesting because it's not that much better than like the regular Plasma Caster or the modified Plasma Caster. When it comes to damage, it almost does less than half compared to the Plasma Caster, and when it comes to DPS, it just barely beats out the modified Plasma Caster. And when it comes to crit chance and crit damage, it's much less than the Plasma Casters. It does have more in its magazine and is much more durable, but because the Smitty Special is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC, you're gonna have to buy it from Gloria in the Silver Rush, and I just don't think it's really worth it. Now, the name itself is a reference to the original Fallout, where a character named Smitty, who is a blacksmith, will upgrade the Vault Dweller's plasma rifle to a turbo plasma rifle as thanks for completing his quest. The last two energy weapons we have are very similar to the missing laser pistol, as in they're just quest items. We have the Van Graff laser rifle and the Van Graff plasma rifle, and you get a choice to pick between either one during the quest Birds of a Feather. And both of them compared to their original counterparts are just much worse, and there's no reason to ever... I mean, they're just quest weapons that are eventually going to get taken back from you, so neither of these two, like, really matter. Moving on to Boom Boom weapons, we have the Esther, which is a unique Fat Man that requires 100 explosive and a strength of 8. And you're going to need it because this thing is the heaviest gun in the game, weighing in at 40 pounds. Dealing more damage than its regular Fat Man counterpart and having a higher DPS, with no crit damage and no crit chance. This thing just fires like mini nukes. It's gonna be good. It fires mini nukes and they explode and they're huge, and you get a lot of shots actually out of this. Like, you wouldn't think a weapon that fires mini nukes would have too many shots, but it surprisingly does. You're gonna be able to fire 620 mini nukes. Like, if you can even get that many, that's insane. And like, any perk that has to do anything with damage is just gonna add so much. Like, if you get the Demolitions Expert perk, you add on another 360 points of damage. Like, it's insane. Now, if you want this giant mini nuke launching death, this is a Gunrunner's Arsenal DLC weapon, so you will have to purchase it from the Gunrunners. The next three weapons are all going to be grenade rifles, so I thought I would talk about all of them at once. We got the Great Bear Grenade Rifle, which is a Lonesome Road DLC weapon and can be found inside the gun case located near Colonel Royas at the Long 15. And all you have to do to get that area open is launch missiles at the NCR. You can launch it at both the NCR and the Legion, but you need to launch them at the NCR during the ending of the Lonesome Road DLC. And compared to all of the other grenade rifles, this one does more direct damage and critical damage, and has the lowest spread, but also has the highest durability. And all of these grenade launchers are based off the very real M79 grenade launcher, and are all affected by multiple perks, especially the Demolition Expert one. Now, the Red Victory, I guess, would be the opposite to the Great Bear Grenade Rifle, because this one was the Chinese version of it. And out of all of them, this one has the highest DPS, and has the lowest AP cost and the lowest weight, and it shares the highest spread with the standard variant and the mercenary variant. And to get this, you're pretty much gonna have to do the same exact thing, except for you're gonna nuke the Legion. So at the end of the Lonesome Road DLC, you wanna nuke the Legion instead. And if you do that, it will be found in a gun case on the cliff on the western side of Dry Wells. Now, the last grenade rifle is going to be the Mercenaries Grenade Rifle. And this one shares a lot in common with just the regular grenade rifle, and is definitely by no means as good as the Great Bear or the Red Victory, and it just really isn't much different than the regular old grenade rifle. And unlike a lot of other unique weapons, this one can be modified with the long barrel mod, so you can double the projectile velocity and the effective range. Now you might be wondering, why would they ever put something so bad in the game? That's because it is a Courier's Stash / Mercenary Pack add-on, which means you start the game off with it. Yeah, I fooled you there, didn't I? Now, the last unique grenade rifle we're going to be talking about is going to be the Thump Thump, requiring an explosive skill of 25 and a strength of 3. And this one already comes pre-installed with the long barrel mod, and compared to all of the other grenade rifles, has the second highest DPS, and also being tied with the Red Victory for having the highest durability. To get the Thump Thump, you were going to want to head to the Nellis Array, which is in the northeast corner of the Nellis Air Force Base. You go to this area during the quest Ant Misbehaving when you gotta go kill a bunch of ants, but you want to come down here to the bottom floor, and next to the skeleton you can find the Thump Thump. Mercy is a unique grenade machine gun that requires an explosive skill of 100 and a strength of 8. And compared to its other grenade machine gun counterparts, it does more damage at the cost of using 40mm grenades compared to the 25mm grenades, which is what the standard variant uses. And compared to its standard counterpart and its modified counterpart, it will have a much higher DPS and area of effect damage, while also having a much better critical chance, but having a critical damage of 0. And also being way more durable, like 2 times the amount, like 2.5 times the amount. It's gonna last you way longer. Now Mercy can be found in the Dead Wind Cavern, and it will be located next to a dead Brotherhood of Steel Paladin. And just do be careful because this is like Deathclaw Alley. Like you probably will die. You better make sure you are like beefed up to come in here. And this gun is very similar to Vengeance from Fallout 3 in that both guns are heavy weapons found in Deathclaw caves, and their names are antonyms for each other. So, coincidence? I think not. The last cool thing about Mercy is if you look on the side, you'll see in white writing, Hei Gui Bai Bai. I probably butchered that. But the Hei Gui is the Chinese stealth armor, and saying Hei Gui Bai Bai means it don't matter how stealthy you are, you can't escape an explosion. Annabelle is going to be a unique variant of the missile launcher, requiring an explosive skill of 75 and a strength of 5. Comparing it to its regular counterpart, it does more damage, has a higher DPS, but will have the same area of effect damage, while also having a lower AP cost and being much more durable. And what's interesting is that it only has a strength requirement of 5, so it's much lighter and easier to use than the standard missile launcher. To get Annabelle, you're going to want to head to Black Mountain, and be careful because it will be actively being used by the Nightkin Sniper, who seems to have like auto-aim whenever I go up there, so be careful. But you just have to kill him and loot it off of his body. The last and final weapon we have for you today is going to be the Holy Frag Grenades, with an explosive skill of 0 and a strength of 2 to use, but you will need the Wild Wasteland trait. Now, there's only 3 of these, so it's not like you can use it forever and repair it or anything. Once you use it, you lose it. And comparing it to its regular frag grenade counterpart isn't even fair. Like, it's so much more powerful than the regular grenade, and the area of effect damage is just so wider. Like, there's a reason you only get 3 of these. Now, like I said, in order to get this, you have to have the Wild Wasteland trait, and you want to come to Camp Searchlight, and you want to head to the basement of the church, and they will just be sitting there waiting for you right on the table. And the Holy Hand Grenades are actually a reference to Monty Python and the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch, which I talked more about in my Fallout New Vegas Wild Wasteland video.
We have the Holy Hand Grenade. Yes, of course. The Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch.
So with that is where we're going to call today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and a real quick shout out to my beautiful Patreons. We got Brian Hahn, Person, Fat Lucky Potato, Icy Storm, B-Rad the Man, Giovanni Diaz, Mayall, GDI Smackdown, Forg, Ty Mulan, Henry Heiberg, and Just Game and 8. Patreons get videos early and access to my Discord chat where they can berate me anytime they want. So with all that said, you can go now. Leave.